Get home from school, turn on my TV. Who are these friends staring right back at me? Now that we're older, why don't you come over and go back in time with me? 90s babies nostalgia.
You start, right? Well, I'm starting, but you have to say your name.
She's starting. I forgot my name. Comes first. Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Jessica, and this is 90s Babies Nostalgia, where two fully grown millennial women rewatch and sometimes watch for the first time iconic tween entertainment from the early 2000s. And in this case, iconic tween entertainment from 2023.
Just to be clear, we are not sponsored by, affiliated with any of the actors, brands, shows, production companies, distribution companies that we talk about. We just really like talking about TV. And today, the TV that we're talking about is
Heartstopper Season 2.
And as always, like I said just now, we are not affiliated with anything. And I want to make that very, very clear. We are a rewatch channel primarily, and we've been following Disney Channel, and we love that. But currently, the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA are both on strike. Now, consuming media is not something that they are dissuading us from doing, because they want the studios to see how valuable their work is. However, promoting media is a gray line. You know, the actors in SAG-AFTRA cannot currently go on podcasts and promote their own work. And we recognize that Heartstopper is a British cast, British production company. It's by Seesaw Productions, which is all a different union, not SAG-AFTRA, but it is a Netflix exclusive distribution. It is greenlit by Netflix, and all of the actors currently are not promoting it. They are appearing in promotions that were filmed or recorded prior to the strike, possibly because they want to be a part of SAG-AFTRA at some point, possibly just in solidarity. But Alice Oseman, the creator, is the only one really promoting it right now. We felt like it's a foreign production, and we love it so much, and we're such a small podcast that it was a gray enough area that we felt comfortable covering it.
Yep, and you'll see that moving forward. We're going to do a pause on the Disney shows for now. So I know up next, technically, if we're continuing chronologically, we have Sweet Life. That's probably not going to happen for a little while, just because we do want to show our solidarity to everyone on the picket lines right now. So we'll probably continue with foreign TV shows. We're probably going to maybe do some movies and TV shows of independent and smaller production companies is our plan. So if you have any suggestions on what you would like us to watch that falls under that bracket, let us know.
And we could even talk about music. We're really open to any sort of media. Jess is a huge music girly. I had a whole indie film phase. I love a work in translation. So yeah, I think it'll be good for us, honestly. I think it'll be good for us to like be able to branch out and literally just do whatever we want.
Yeah, and keep it interesting and entertaining.
Yeah, not that we're not doing what we want all the time, because literally this is our passion project and we're just doing it for fun. But like sometimes we do feel obligated to a specific show.
Totally. And I think there is part of us, we always say we're like, oh, we don't have to keep it chronological. But I know deep down me and Amanda feel some sort of pull to keeping it chronological with the Disney shows. So this is kind of giving us a time to like experiment and change things up. So I think that will be good.
Absolutely. Yeah. But before we get into Heartstopper, Jess, what have you been listening to or watching lately?
So I was going to switch it up and not do a TV rec just based on what we just covered. So I'm going to do a video game recommendation. I, like Amanda, are really into cozy games. And so I got really into Stardew, but that is not what I'm recommending. I'm going to recommend a game called Ooblets. If you are into Stardew Valley, into like super cozy, cute, artistic games, this game is just, I could spend hours. I have spent hours. um, you're this woman who has a farm, and you're going around your farm and you're collecting all these little things called ooblets, and you do dance battles to win them. And it's just so cutesy and so fun. And after a stressful day, and even a non-stressful day, it's like the perfect way to relax. So that is my what am I doing lately? How about you?
I haven't started Ooblets yet, but you recommended it to me and it does look very cute. The problem is that you recommended it right as I started a Stardew Valley playthrough. So I'm
Not good timing.
No, I can't play multiple games because then I fall off of all of them and don't play anything for 2 years. So mine is music. just music. I think especially the last week I have really loved connecting with artists I don't normally listen to. I spoke to you on Tuesday about Connor and the Wild Hunt, which is just like an indie folk band that's super duper small. They have 250 listeners on Spotify, and I'm one of them now. And I saw Carly Rae Jepsen on Monday in person, and I'm someone who forgets how good music is and how it just feels good to not stimulate my brain so much with new content and videos and plot lines and things I'm thinking about, and to just feel. I think music is much more of an intuitive emotional consumption, if that makes sense. And like, I listened to a song by Connor and the Wild Hunt and was like, oh my God, that's the main character of my book. And then I listened to a song by Carly Rae Jepsen the next day and was like, oh my God, that's my other main character. And I've been more inspired to write, and I feel a little more at peace when I'm not constantly pumping myself with content, which I do tend to do. So also, my old therapist once said that if you listen to music for 30 minutes a day or more, I think it lowers your stress levels.
I completely think that's true.
Right?
Music is just like magical, especially live music. It is just like so amazing. And a lot of us who are like into live music, like myself, really struggled during the pandemic because I wasn't having that form of like being able to just separate and have this emotional experience in a crowd of people. And I just think there's like nothing else like it.
Absolutely. However, we do have a very special thing to get into that is that does warm our hearts in a similar but very different way. That really touches us. We are getting into Heartstopper season 2. We're going to do the intro to season 2 and the first 3 to 4 episodes, depending on how long this goes for. And then we're going to cover the rest in another episode of our podcast, so be sure to look out for that. But just before we get into it, I wanted to give a little trigger warning. Heartstopper is, by and large, a wholesome bit of media for everyone, but there are some serious topics. And in season 2, especially, we see a development of an eating disorder, mentioning of self-harm, and a more detailed explanation of what the bullying and outing was like for our characters. So if any of those things will bring you discomfort or potentially trigger you, then this isn't the podcast for you. Also, if you're looking for a spoiler-free zone, this is not the podcast for you, babe. So
all spoilers, only spoilers. If you do not want spoilers, leave, watch it, and then come back and listen.
Yeah, and it's a quick watch. It's 8 episodes. They're half an hour each. I watched it entirely in one sitting. It's fine. You can do it. And also, yes, it's Netflix, but support queer media. So that's that, I think.
Yeah.
So if you're unfamiliar with Heartstopper, we also have an episode on season 1 from last year. Go listen to that. It's something. You want to talk about it? About what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for people who are unfamiliar, one, listen to Amanda. Go listen to our episode on it last year. Also, like, are you living under a rock? I'm really confused.
It's one of the top shows on Netflix, babe.
Yeah, exactly. It's a webcomic based off a webcomic written by Alice Oseman, which was then turned into a graphic novel and then turned into a TV series. It follows the story of Nick and Charlie. Who's a gay teenager and then a bi teenager, and you see they're kind of like learning to love each other and coming out story while also following a bunch of other queer teenage plot lines. And we just loved it. We fell in love with it immediately. I think we both have watched it 5+ times, season 1.
I just watched it for my 4th time before watching this.
I think I've watched season 1 7 or 8 times.
Incredible.
It's just amazing. Like, it's so well done. I have read the graphic novel. Amanda has not, but it's
you read the full webcomic, didn't you?
Yeah, that's actually, I don't have the novels.
I have the first one, and I haven't read it yet. But I think the webcomic has more content and is still actively updating, isn't it?
So she took a pause in either like March or April of this year, and that's where I am caught up to.
Mm-hmm. I thought I saw an update on it on Tumblr recently, but I don't know.
So also, actually, I think the pause was taken this would make more sense based on when it came out. So the pause happened like last summer around, and then Alice came back and started posting more content to it at the beginning of this year, like January, February. So I'm caught up until the pause. So anything that's new in the last 6 months, I have not read.
And also, if you don't know, we are going to be using she, they pronouns for Alice Oseman, which are their pronouns. So don't be confused about it. It's not weird. And for the tiniest of backstories in Heartstopper season 1, because it's important to season 2, when we first meet Charlie Spring, played by Joe Locke, he is 14, turns 15 in season 1, and he's already been outed in the school. He's one of the only openly gay kids in school, and he meets Nick Nelson, who everyone assumes is straight, and he thinks himself to be straight, and then he falls for Charlie and goes through this journey of self-discovery and realizing that he's bi. And so we leave off of season 1 with the two of them deciding that they are going to be boyfriends and they are going to tell people. And we also have a friend group with their friend Isaac, who is the only is an original character to the show, canonically Ace, though he doesn't know it at the time of season 1. And we get Tao and Elle, who are also in the friend group. Elle being a transgender girl who goes to the girls' school Higgs. They go to Truman as the boys' school. They're right next to each other. And in season 1, we get the glimpses that Elle likes Tao. And that's it. And like Tao might like Elle. But just glimpses. Mm-hmm. And we have Tara and Darcy, who are the school lesbians at Higgs. And they're in love. But they don't say love. But they like, They are. Those are the main characters. And Olivia Colman is also there.
Yes. Importantly. We just want to like touch on a few things that are different from like season 1 to season 2. Season 1 is really like, as we mentioned, like building the story, showing you these characters. You're getting glimpses at their relationship and glimpses into their life. But it's primarily focused on Nick and Charlie, where this season it still is a lot of Nick and Charlie, which is, I mean, that's what the novels are about, so that's what we want. But there's so much more expansion and development on the other main characters and side character relationships, as well as additional new characters that are brought in as well. And there's a lot of focus on kind of the group as a whole in the development of all these side relationships, which just makes it like really entertaining to watch because there's so much going on.
It also makes it a head fuck to summarize. Okay, we're trying something new this time because we know we're all over the place. We're aware.
Yeah.
We're also just like I'm very excited to record today because we haven't recorded in a month and a half, and recording is just sitting down and talking with my best friend for a couple of hours, which means that I'm also all over the place. So we made an outline. But summarizing these freaking episodes, because it's about these relationships, but it's also about the friendship. Jess was like, I can't go chronologically because it looks bananas. And then I looked at how she sectioned things off and I was like, that looks bananas. And we don't really know what's going to work, but
Yeah. We're trying it out. It's something new. We've never done an outline. We've never done summaries like this. So we'll see how it goes. I don't really want your opinion on it. I think we'll make the decision if we like it or not.
That's true. I was going to say, give us your thoughts, but no, we'll figure out what we like.
Yeah.
So, we see more side characters and we see more family. So, notably, our new side characters, are we introducing them?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we've got Mr. Farouk, Yusef Farouk, Nima Talagani, I believe.
That's who plays Mr. Farouk. And a lot, as in season 1, a lot of these actors, it's their first ever credit. Some of these older actors do have some other credits. So he has a lot of like live theater credits that were like filmed to DVD and some TV movies, but nothing necessarily notable that I found notable.
And Mr. Farouk is the like stuffy maths teacher.
Yeah.
He's just like really strict. We'll get into the characters more as they show up in the plot. We also see Elle make 2 new friends early on. Naomi, played by Belle Priestley, who is another trans female character. And Felix, played by Ash Self, who Jess informed me is the first non-binary character. And also is in a wheelchair, which is both super cool.
And then we have canonically 2 the books that was not included in season 1, which semi-upset some fans, but oh well, they got over it because Alice gave it to them in season 2. We get Sahar, who's played by Layla Khan. And then we also get Nick's brother, David, who's played by Jack Barton. He has some TV series credits. Again, nothing I found notable, but if there's something notable, don't yell at me.
Also, we're going to talk about this throughout, but Alice is incredible because they so clearly have a vision for this show, but also gave into so much fan pressure. And if you think that the graphic novels line up to the series, they don't. I've been told it's like novels 1 and 2 or series 1, kind of. And this one's like the 3rd novel-ish. So it's, yeah. We have Stefan. I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name because it's very French. Thibault de Montelembe.
That's much better than I could have done.
And Jess wrote, he's been in a bunch of things.
Yep. That's where my brain was at this morning after summarizing.
And then we have James, who is the other gay kid in school. And we actually see James very briefly during the sports day scene where Nick grabs Charlie's hand and walks off at the end of season 1. And he is played by Bradley Riches, who literally the only other thing on his IMDb is 1917, and it says uncredited. So has done nothing, which is super rad. Like, I wanted to talk briefly about, I forgot, first of all, how young these actors are. I swear, I have a mental image of Googling Kit Connor and the result being that he's 21 years old. The boy is 19. The boy turned 19 in March. Joe will turn 20 in September. They're about 6 months apart. This is
which to put into perspective in terms of filming, that means they were like 16, 17 when they were filming the first season, and they both were 18 while filming the second season. So not far off the ages that they play, and this was intentional.
Yeah, and the oldest characters of the teenagers are like Will and Sebastian Croft, William Gow, who plays Tao, and Sebastian Croft, who plays Ben. They're both around like 2021. Like it's, well, actually, Tara's actress, I think, is considerably older. But regardless, but they did open casting calls when they initially cast season 1. In January and February of 2021, they put out an open casting call. In April and May, they announced who was cast, and in April through June, they shot the first season. That is, I cannot imagine putting out an open casting call. Like Joe, this is the first audition Joe Locke ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these people have no credits. Imagine how many other people auditioned over Zoom too, so it's super accessible. And within 2 months, they had their cast.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That's
absurd.
Toby Donovan, who plays Isaac.
Isaac.
I think I mentioned this in our last episode, but with Heartstopper, but he was working, I'm pretty sure it was Sainsbury's, but he was working as Sainsbury's as like a checkout clerk, and then like got hired to be as an actor. Like, and that's not rare. And like a lot of those names we just touched on because they have no credits. And this just really shows, I think, such an amazing testament to like Alice, the show that they're building, as well as the casting director, to be able to like pick people based on look, vibe, personality, how they're going to portray the characters in the novel without really trying to get a bunch of credible names. And then they threw in, you know, we get Olivia Colman, we get some big names, but
which I read was just someone was like, the casting director, someone in production was like, I think Olivia Colman would have great like maternal energy and be great for Sarah, and I think Alice maybe threw that out as like, that's kind of like my ideal fan casting, and they were like, why don't we just ask Olivia Colman? And then they got her on for an episode. Like she only films for like a day or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's busy. She's got things to do.
Yeah. Our music, the people who make this show are so good because it's a cohesive piece of art with a very specific lighting and costuming and editing style, and the music as well. It's a little more mainstream this season because I recognized the artists, not all the time, but sometimes. We have a Carly Rae Jepsen song early on. We've got a very iconic montage to a Taylor Swift song at the end. We've got some Tegan and Sarah in there, our gay queens. But we've also got still a number of unknown artists, and it just feels so good.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything else to add besides that the playlist too
Slaps.
Yeah, it's so good. The other thing I did want to touch on too was like costumes. I don't remember this from season 1, but damn, the costuming in season 2 is just great. These outfits are excellent. It's so well done, and it's Adam D is the costume designer, and he also did season 1 as well. But he does costume designs for like some shorts and then EastEnders, so nothing really in the vibe of Heartstopper, and I think that Adam just like nails it, especially in this season.
Just deleted my comment off our outline where she had put a series called EastEnders, and I was like, LOL, like this is a very iconic British soap opera that's been running since 1985. Not that I've seen it, but I'm aware of it. But yeah, the art department is so intentional. I've heard they changed the color of the school. The first season is more blue tones, and now because the seasons and the relationships are developing, the motifs of this season are more pink tones. So they literally changed, like repainted the school. There's also a mural of waves, and they've added elements for season 2 to the waves. In season 1, we see them in their uniforms a lot. They wanted to develop more personality and get out of that. So in season 2, it's a lot of just regular street clothes, and they found pieces that were identical to what was in the books, and because they're graphic novels, they found even like the backpacks are often the same, and they let the actors play with it as well. Like Elle's outfits are a bit more bohemian because Yasmin, the actress's style, is more bohemian, and she got to have a say in that. So really just incredibly cohesive and thoughtful art.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, 25 minutes into our recording.
Mm-hmm.
Should we get into episode 1?
Yeah, episode 1, titled Out.
Mm-hmm.
It opens up right where we left off. So Nick and Charlie are boyfriends, and Nick just came out to his mom and is sharing this with Charlie and saying how well it went. Then we go to school, and we learn that Nick and Charlie aren't together for form group this term, which is where they like met and kind of developed their relationship last season, because all year 11s have GCSE study hall. So now Charlie's alone during form group. For GCSE study hall, we get our first introduction of Mr. Farouk, which we mentioned is like the very stern, strict, tense, like yells at the kids teacher. But also I feel like you can tell he does like teaching. He's just like very strict. Amanda thinks differently. And Nick is sat next to Ben.
Classic, which I really want to know how that happened because Nick Nelson and Ben Hope, not alphabetical, but okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm like, who were the other people in the class and were those alphabetical? Like, couldn't really tell, but yeah, it doesn't make sense. We see Nick go up to Coach Singh and ask Coach Singh to rejoin the rugby team, which he quit.
Charlie.
Guys.
To be clear, like, Nick didn't quit rugby. He's the rugby king. But Charlie quit last season when he was having a meltdown. He asks to rejoin, mostly because he just wants to spend more time with Nick. Because they don't have study together anymore.
So we see them at their first practice with Charlie back. And after practice, Nick... No, this isn't true either. This is wrong. Sorry, guys. Bear with us. Charlie gives Nick a 2-month anniversary gift, which leads them to making out in the locker room, and has Nick kind of sharing with Charlie, like, okay, I want to start coming out to people. I want people to know by the Paris trip so we can be out on the Paris trip. And so Charlie sets up a sleepover to help Nick come out to Imogen. But Nick just like can't seem to get it out. Like she's there and he's just like pausing. Like Imogen is clearly like, oh, how did you two meet? Or like, how did you get to know the friend group? And instead of Nick being like, oh, well, Charlie is my boyfriend, Nick is just like, well, we, like he can't form sentences.
Yeah. And this is at a sleepover with their whole friend group that they now are integrating Imogen into. So everyone else knows. But finally...
And everyone's like cheering him on.
Yeah,
like, come on, Nick, you got this. Like,
but finally she asks to go to the bathroom and Nick is like, I'll show you where it is. And then they get upstairs and Imogen just looks like she really needs to pee. Like she keeps glancing at the bathroom and he's like, actually, I wanted to tell you something. And he's pausing and finally she just blurts out, it's about you and Charlie, isn't it? Oh my God, I'm sorry. I should have let you say that. But it's pretty obvious, right? And comes out to him and he comes out to her and says he's bisexual, actually, which becomes a tagline for the whole series. And which he says initially because she's like, and it makes sense the whole not liking me because you were gay. And he's like, I'm bi, actually.
Yeah.
And they have a hug and she apologizes for not knowing how to react. And he's like, this is perfect. And now that she knows this, he's like, you have to tell me who you like. And she's like, I like Ben. And it ruins the whole moment because his face just drops. And then we get this super, super cute moment where like they're all leaving the sleepover the next morning and Nick hugs Charlie and then goes to leave. And then he looks at all his friends and realizes that they all know that they're together. So then he goes back and he makes out with Charlie in the middle of the doorway. And Darcy's like, I can't believe anyone thinks that he's straight. So that's really lovely. And then we see Charlie tell his parents that actually Nick is his boyfriend. That's kind of their storyline in this episode. There's so many details, guys.
And then Tao and Elle storyline is we see Elle at school and she's trying to get advice. She's like, I don't know what to do with this Tao situation. Like, he just doesn't seem interested in me. And Tara and Darcy are like, just flirt with him. Like, do obvious flirting with him so he knows that you're interested. And so she tries flirting with him pretty blatantly, and he is just like oblivious.
She twirls his hair.
Yeah. She literally does like your hair's cute long, but it could be cute short. And then like goes into his face and like twirls his hair. And it's like, Tao, if you did not like notice that, like how dumb are you? Like I don't understand. And so during the sleepover, Elle's trying to get inspiration for her art school submission. And so Tao and Elle are kind of outside in the backyard sitting on a picnic. And Tao's like, oh, I'll be your inspiration. Like, paint me as one of your French girls. And he's like doing all these funny poses. And they have a moment where they both like lean in really, really close. And it looks like they might kiss. But then Elle apologizes and like pulls away. And Tao is like pretty confused by it after. Like he continues to sit outside by himself for a little bit.
I think Tao pulls away.
Oh, that makes more sense.
And then Elle's like, I'll go order your pizza. You still like, or you want Hawaiian, right?
Yeah, that is what happens. And then at the sleepover, she kind of shares what happens with Tara and Darcy and is like, you know what? I think at this point, I just need to get over him.
That's kind of the main summary. I know we've already gone over details, but now we're going to go over the things we really got to talk about, okay?
Yeah.
Starting the fact that, like we said, it picks up literally where we left off.
Yeah.
Then, like Nick comes over and he's like, I came out to my mom last night. And then we get a kissing montage for like ever. Like, even though it picks up literally where it left off, we actually don't know how much time has passed because we just get this kissing montage that looks like it's been like weeks or months of them just like hanging out and making out. It's so much kissing, but I love it because
so cute.
And this is something that I notice in like so many scenes, but their intimacy coordinator must be so good, and also their acting, because their body language feels very genuine whenever they have those intimate scenes, you know?
I wish I remembered the intimacy coordinator's name, but have you watched Sex Education?
Yes, absolutely.
It's the same intimacy coordinator, and I think it shows.
I think so too.
It's just all those scenes are like so well done.
Yeah. I wanted to also ask you, before we get into the other things to talk about, one of my lower points is to talk about like how, because it picks up right where it left off, how do you feel everyone looks compared to season 1? Because I think, you know, a lot of shows that portray teenagers, they prefer to work with adults, A, because of child labor laws, and B, because children are actively aging. So it's hard to do a show where like it's picking up right where it left off, but we filmed a year later. So do you feel like they look the same, or they aged a bit much and it's a little less realistic? Or
I didn't find it less realistic. I think the big change, which was purposeful, that we touched on with costuming, does kind of add to the natural aging that happened, because if you have an entire season where basically all they're wearing is their school uniform, automatically that makes them look a little more childish because they're in a school uniform. And now we have them in street clothes, plus they're a little older. So I do think they look older, but they still look like teenagers. I don't know if they look 16, 17, but like it feels pretty believable that they're playing young teenagers.
I agree. And I think they all aged to a similar degree.
Yeah.
So their dynamics still feel the same in terms of height and size. The biggest difference is Kit, I think, because he beefed up.
I was going to say, he got buff.
He got buff. His shirts are not fitting the same.
No, they're like tight on his arms.
But also, I think his jaw got broader. And when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, you can go through a growth spurt in a couple of months, but you can't really get like that buff or that like broader of a jawline so quickly. So that's something, but it's fine. It plays whatever. He still has a baby face. I was really pleased with the costuming. Also, it's I want to commend like the way that they do the costume and makeuping, because it feels very natural. Like this is not a CGI type of situation where they're gonna make sure they look younger. So it's really it's well done considering how much time has passed. Yasmin Elle was the one that I was the most concerned about, because when you're transitioning, your appearance does change quite a bit in the time span of a year, and she's like a supermodel outside of the show, but she still looked very similar to how she did before, just maybe like a little more polished, and her wigs were definitely bigger.
Yeah. But that probably was a choice. But yeah, I agree. I think the aging, like, you saw it a little bit, but not as intensely as we've seen in like other shows we've watched.
Yeah. I literally watched season 1 and then I rewatched the last 6 minutes of Charlie and Nick at the beach and then him coming out and then the montage before starting season 2 again, just to check.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
I was like, I really want to know. Anyway, what are your other things?
My other things are that we get this cute little scene where Tal and Elle, well, everyone is in like this corner store getting like snacks before school. And there's one apple juice left. And we get this kind of like semi-flirty moment with Tal and Elle where they're like fighting over the apple juice. And Tal ends up just letting Elle have it.
Tal and Elle's love language is apple juice.
Well, seriously.
From the very first episode of this show.
Also, something that I was just like, man, we couldn't have made this any less obvious is when Charlie is giving Nick the 2-month anniversary gift, he gives him like a Cadbury Oreo chocolate bar. And it is such an obvious Cadbury ad that I almost could not handle it.
You don't think that like they just thought, what's the most British thing you can get? A Cadbury bar?
No, it was an ad. You see him buying it at the store and him pulling it out, and it's like a close up on it. And then when he gives it,
and he's like, "How'd you know it was my favorite?"
Mm-hmm.
But it kills me that it's not just a chocolate bar, not just a Cadbury bar, but it's an Oreo Cadbury bar.
Yeah, yeah, which is like not the classic. Also, like, come on, we're not doing Cadbury Carmelo. That's the best.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, yeah. Ugh.
Or a Cadbury button. I don't know. I just feel like there's better Cadbury options, personally.
Speaking of food, please tell me what you mean about disgusting ass pizza because I did not notice this.
Oh my god, the pizza that they ate looked terrible. It looked like cardboard. Oh no, I noticed both times I watched it. I was like, I would not eat that pizza.
I want to talk about a little bit the end of the episode when Charlie tells his parents that Nick is his boyfriend, because this is some good ass representation. Because on the one hand, Nick is the one coming out, right? And Nick has Sarah, Olivia Colman, his mom, single mom. We love Sarah. We just had that coming out scene and she's like, I hope that I never made you feel like you couldn't tell me and I'm so proud of you. And she's so lovely and just like gentle. And then we have his parents who have known that his ass is gay since he came out the womb and know what he went through being outed. And he tells them, hey, actually, Nick's my boyfriend. And they're like, all right, so you're not having any more sleepovers and you really, like, we're limiting your time around him. There is also, like, an iffy moment of his mom being like, oh, I just didn't expect that he's gay, considering he's so sporty. And Charlie's like, well, he's bi, actually, and being sporty has nothing to do with being gay, which, like, preach. But I just think it's so funny that it's, like, truly being the best parent to a gay child is when you're past the shock value of dealing with or grappling with your emotions about your kid being gay and you're just parenting them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not treating this like if that was his girlfriend, then they wouldn't want any sleepovers. His dad says no hanky panky, all of that. Like they're just being parents, which I actually really liked.
Mm-hmm. I do think his parents are like a little intense, and I think that they add to his stress.
Yeah.
And some of the like issues that we see him struggle with later in the season that we'll touch on. I definitely think his parents add to that unknowingly, but I do agree at the end of the day they are just trying to parent him to the best of their abilities.
And we're not parenting him any differently because he's gay. Yep. That's what I like.
Let's move on to our quotes.
We've got some great ones.
We got some really good ones. Great one from Darcy is when she learns that Nick is going to come out to Imogen first. Darcy goes, it'll be fine. She's an ally, which is callback to season 1. And it's just so good.
And when she says it, Tara, Darcy, and Elle all crack up. And the boys all look very confused, which is great acting because they don't know that happened.
Yeah, they don't have the context.
When they are when Ben and Nick are together in study hall and Nick is texting Charlie, Ben says, if you're trying to keep it quiet, you should probably stop acting so gay for him. Like, Ben has a lot of really great lines. I actually love him as a villain. Sorry, not sorry, but
He's a great villain, but I hate his character.
don't
But
you
he
love to
does
hate him?
play. Yeah, you love to hate him. Also, my queen, Tori, the Charlie's older sister, I just resonate with her older sister energy so much. But when he's setting up for this sleepover, he's like bowls and bowls and bowls of snacks. Like he looks like he's like supreme host. I'm like, are you a Virgo? Because this is like really good, like hosting and presentation. It's just fantastic.
I think maybe that's the right amount of snacks, but continue.
Oh, you think it was the right? I agree because I'm like constantly hungry and I just want all the food and I'm very food driven. But Tori goes, why exactly did you purchase the entire Tesco snack aisle? And it was just like, I don't know. It's just like a lovely moment.
Mm-hmm. And then the other lovely moment that I mentioned is his parents, when they're saying there's no sleepovers and doors open all the time, is the dad says, there will be no hanky-panky in this house. And then he says hanky-panky multiple times. And Tori's like, stop saying hanky-panky.
Yeah, it's really funny. And it's just like that type of conversation would happen. Like in a household with multiple siblings, it just felt very real.
Yeah. So episode 2, family.
Mm-hmm.
For Nick and Charlie's plot line, I mean, we start off with a montage that it's parent-teacher conference day, and generally we see like all of the members, like Ben's doing amazingly and Isaac needs to participate more. Nick is doing really well, but Charlie's teachers all say that his grades are slipping, he's coming to school late, and he's been distracted. So that leads his parents, as I said, being real parents, to banning him from going around Nick's house or having Nick over until he gets his history coursework turned in, which he says he has a couple weeks left to do, but still the ban. Since they are banned from seeing each other, Charlie shows up at Nick's study hall with pretending he tells Mr. Farouk that he borrowed his pen just so they can like stand in front of everyone and talk. And I'm like, girl, if this ain't the most obvious little relationship.
Well, also, like, Mr. Farouk really fell for that. You know he knew.
And also would be like, so give it back to him during passing period. Like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, seriously. Like, the fact that he even tolerated letting them chat to each other. I'm like...
Yeah. But after this happens, Nick goes to sit down again, and Ben starts talking to him about Charlie again, which leads Mr. Farouk to putting them in their own isolation room. Jess put this note, but they're together. Yeah, they're isolated from the rest of the group. As Mr. Farouk says, I don't give a fuck if, I'm paraphrasing. He says, I don't give a fuck if you pass or fail, but you're not going to stop the other kids from passing. Like I said, no talking. So then they talk, and they have a really great conversation where Ben is like talking about how he never even did anything to Nick, and like, you hate me because Charlie liked me first, and Nick says, I hate you because you literally assaulted him, which is such a great line. And they talk about Imogen because now Ben and Imogen are dating, and do you even like her? And Ben throws out a, what, am I not allowed to like boys and girls, which is a valid villain bisexual. Like, we need all kinds of representation. Whether or not Ben is actually bisexual, though, I don't know that I believe.
Agree.
Yeah. Nick has seemingly a horrible time on his math GCSE exam, where I think he's really, like, I got the impression he was having a panic attack.
I got the same impression because we listed it to talk about here, but I think we can mention it now. In the show, you see him taking his math GCSE, and as we mentioned, there's like a lot of cutesy, or I know we mentioned last time, so it's like cutesy little graphic novel moments that they put in the show. So you'll see like leaves falling or fireworks, or butterflies or things like that across the scene. But in this scene, you see like a bunch of black scribbles and things start to get blurry, and all of the math is like jumbling together into like a big mixed up pile. And I agree that it seems like Nick is having a panic attack while taking his math GCSE.
And what we forgot to mention is Nick's brother David came home from school already. And while this ban is going on, Charlie sneaks out once to meet up with Nick at the park because he's not out to David, and David's an asshole, and he's like, this is probably not great. But because Nick had such a rough day, Charlie sneaks out again to come over to his house and cheer him up. And while Nick is making tea for Charlie, David comes in and is just an asshole and knows about Nick and Charlie already and says, I wanted to meet the guy who turned my little brother gay. Charlie feels upset that he didn't stick up for Nick better because there's a fight. And, but ultimately he goes home because it blows up and just straight up tells his parents that he was at Nick's. And so he gets grounded for the rest of term for sneaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie's great here. We'll get more into that, but yeah.
And then Tao and Elle. Tao invites Elle over to get inspiration for art because that was the last thing they were connecting on. And she, is like, I have another thing I'm going to, which is true. She's going to this like open day for the art school that she wants to attend for sixth form Lambert. And so she, trying to put distance between them. She's like, hey, I have another event. Can't meet up with you. This is where we see her meet Naomi and Felix, which are the trans and non-binary characters that we mentioned before. After math GCSEs, Tao shows up at Elle's house to see her, but she's getting ready to go out to a club, and she just lets Tao know that she's busy and can't hang out this weekend. At the end of the episode, we see them in the same convenience store again, like getting their snacks before school, but Elle's not there this time. And in this scene, Tao admits to Charlie and Isaac that he likes Elle. And the way he does it, he's like, I like Elle, and I know it's not convenient, and I know that this may like ruin the friendship and mess everything up and mess up us as a group, but I don't care. I'm going to tell her, and I understand that it's just selfish, but it's what I'm going to do. And I kind of like seeing that side of Tao.
I love the part where he goes, and don't laugh at me because I know you've probably all been laughing behind my back about how oblivious I am and how obvious it was.
Yeah.
So he's going to ask her out. And then just also the other main plot point that we get throughout this is within the girls' friendship at Higgs, we get introduced to Sahar because the girls are just talking about how like 11th year prom is coming back. And they're just gossiping, and then she comes up and she's like, oh my god, are you talking about prom? They put me in charge of planning it and I don't know what to do. And so Elle, Tara, Darcy, and Sahar are all planning prom together, and Sahar just seamlessly fits into the friend group.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the gist of the plots. Now we'll get into the notes.
Mm-hmm. We learn in this episode there's a moment between Tao and his mom, and we learn that Tao's dad died when he was younger. And do you want to touch on the other part?
Yeah, so Tao's big I like Elle speech doesn't come out of nowhere. We get a real turning point for him as a character, this light bulb moment, because he has a heart-to-heart with his mom before that scene where because she can tell that he's on Instagram and he's feeling left out about Elle Lambert with her new friends, and she tells him that Tao and Elle remind him of her and his father, that one of them was the calm one and the other one was the outspoken one, but when they were together they were perfect harmony. And she has this great line, if you're afraid of losing her, you have to fight to stay by her side. And this is really what creates this awareness and turning point for Tao, where he goes from being the character that Jessica and I loathed in season 1 to being a self-aware, self-correcting king with, I think, the most growth in the show right now.
Completely agree. We see so much growth, and it continues throughout this season where, just self-aware, I think, is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see his growth, because I did not like him in season 1.
No. And we don't know the details about the dad. They just say that he passed. Or, well, Tao says, like, plus Elle's not, like, actually dead. So,
Yeah. Another thing we mentioned that Charlie sneaks out to the park with Nick because they don't want to be at home because David is at Nick's house. And we get a cute little scene where Nick's is looking at Charlie, and Charlie's like, "Oh, I'm always cold." And so then Nick takes off his sweater and gives it to Charlie, and it's just a very like cute like boyfriend's moment. It just felt like another little add-in to their relationship.
yeah. And then another add-in is we get this Instagram post as Nick is coming out throughout the series. We get a series of Instagram posts that ramp up as they go. So this is the very first one that we get, and it's of Charlie playing with Nick's dog Nellie in the park in this moment, and he just posted to Instagram saying, "I think Nellie loves him," and which is like veiled, but okay.
It's cute.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that this is more just I don't understand. Why did Charlie not lie to his parents? Why was he like, yes, I did sneak out to see Nick? Like he literally could have been like, oh no, sorry, Tao and Elle and I were studying or something. Like, or we were working on coursework together. But instead he literally is just like, yep, I was out with Nick, fucking ground me. Like, I don't get it.
I guess my interpretation is he's so like tired and unwell in that moment. He doesn't have the energy to lie. But it's actually very unlike Charlie Spring to not lie.
Yeah.
Like, as much as these relationships feel very wholesome and mature, these are not perfect characters, perfect beings, and Charlie lies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And starting with that, I really wanted to touch on like this episode is the first indications really that Charlie is unwell. We see sprinkles throughout season 1 of Charlie not eating very much, and in season 2 that escalates. Fans who have read it will know how much so, but this episode to me, like, I love Nick, and I didn't really care about Charlie in season 1, I'm not gonna lie. Now that I've watched it so many times, I also love him, but I relate to him so much, not because I have an eating disorder, I don't, but because he needs to be loved so badly. He's so insecure, and to a point where it is self-sabotaging, because I think it's easy to point at the eating disorder. Yes, there is a point where he's at Nick's house and he says that he's not hungry, he'll eat when he gets home, and so Nick makes him tea, and then he gets home and he says, I ate at Nick's house. Yes, that happens, but also he's failing all of his coursework, but we see him help Nick study twice. But anyway, we start to see how he is not ever putting himself first and lying to people who love him about it.
I agree. Do you want to go to quotes or do you want to touch on your other notes?
Oh, my other notes are that Sebastian Croft uses every second of his screen time because he is never not staring at Charlie or Nick. He is an incredible actor. His Instagram bio is #1 Ben Hope hate club. Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
#1
hate account of Ben Hope, something like that.
Yeah,
hater probably. He hates this character and he plays him so well, and I love him for that. He's so fucking creepy. Also, the utter lack of personal space when Tao and Al sit next to each other. When he comes over to their house, they sit between the doorway. They don't spread out on the stairs. They're like overlapping. They are one being, and it looks so uncomfortable.
I don't know. I kind of like it though, because we see this in season 1 and continues into season 2, even as they're liking each other. Their friendship has always been very close. When they lay in bed together to watch movies, they're like full legs are touching. When they're like walking around outside of school, like Elle has his arm on Tao, like that just is very their relationship.
I agree.
Which I'm like very into. We have some quotes. One, as I don't even know when this happens, but I know that Nick and Charlie are like chatting in bed about I don't know if it's like
It's
GCSEs.
when they can't see each other.
Oh, it's when, okay, they're chatting about not being able to see each other, and Charlie jokes and goes, oh, we're tragic star-crossed lovers. It's very cute.
I already touched on it, but the I hate you because you literally assaulted him line fucking slaps. Because
So
you
good.
don't hear people say that in real life, and you should. And the fact that this teenage boy recognized it is very good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and then when Tao shows up at Elle's house, we hear Elle's mom go, that boy of yours is here. It's very cute.
I love that you read that one because I added it because I just think it's hilarious because they've been friends for years and you know full well that her mom knows his name, but she just calls him that boy of yours. And then again, the really, really good quote from the mom, from Tao's mom: if you're afraid of losing her, you have to fight to stay by her side. Episode 3 is called Promise.
In this episode, we see all of the rugby lads minus Harry come up to Nick after rugby practice, and they're kind of like, why aren't you friends with us anymore? Like, we've stopped hanging out with Harry. Like, we're sorry for what happened at the cinema. Like, the fact that we didn't stand up for Charlie was like extremely insensitive. We should have fought him too. Like, they just truly show that they are like now on Nick's side, and they invite Nick to the end of the year woods party, which like after GCSE, they're all going like out to the woods, which is apparently is the backyard of one of these kids' house. How rich are these kids? I don't understand.
I think it's just he lives in the outskirts. And they don't own the woods.
They could. Nick decides he wants to use this as an opportunity to come out to some of the rugby lads, and he's kind of sharing this with Charlie as they're like putting equipment away in the equipment room after rugby practice, and they start making out in the equipment room, and Coach Singh like walks in on them, and she kind of does like she goes in, she's like, oh, and then she closes the door and then like reopens it. After this happened, she calls Nick into her office and she talks to him and is like, hey, I promoted you to captain and gave you that role because you were the only one that could get everyone to work together. And now this term, like, the team is out of sync. No one's working together. Like, does this, hinting at her saying that make out, have anything to do with it? And kind of like shares like, she met her wife playing rugby, and at the time where she met her wife, there was a lot of lesbians in rugby, but it still was really hard for them. And so she was like, you know, if they're causing a problem and if this is your problem, like, let me know, and that she'd like be there to support them.
And then we get this moment where Charlie is helping Nick study for his chemistry exam before he goes, which is his final exam, and then Charlie rushes and writes his paper in that short amount of time, while Tao and other people are doing other things we're going to talk about. But it's like a little montage, but it was important to me. Anyway, even though that coursework is literally the reason he's been grounded for weeks, but whatever. He's doing it at the last minute. And then they go to the party together and immediately get separated. Like, this group of people we've never seen before pulls Charlie away, which is like actually so scary. Like, and this is where they're going to have a bonfire. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to burn Charlie alive.
It's terrifying. And these high schoolers are hype. Like, they are so stoked that like it is summer and term is over and there is no more GCSEs. And just the energy that they have in which they get separated is scary.
They actually have some time before they get separated where they're just like laying on the ground in the forest, and that's cool. But then as soon as they join the party to like see people, they get separated. And Nick's with his rugby lads, and but then the bonfire, and he's separated, and he's trying to find Charlie, and then he sees Tori, and Tori's like, you promised to take care of him, and then you're not very good at keeping your promises, and then he's not feeling well, and then the boys are there again, and he's like, I have something to tell you, and then Harry shows up, and Charlie's like, piss off, Harry, he doesn't want to talk to you, and then Nick's like, I don't feel well, and Charlie takes him home, and Nick's laying in bed. He's not feeling so good. and they decide that maybe the pressure of coming out is just a bit too much. He's finding it really hard, and they can just be low-key in Paris and then have a good summer being themselves and not put so much pressure on it.
Yeah. And they just like both agree to forget the coming out plan for a little bit.
Yeah.
Tao is brainstorming, and by brainstorming, Googling, because we're just a big fan of Google in general, but especially in this show. They love a good Google. First date ideas, because he decides he's gonna ask Elle out on a date. And so he skips the Paris trip meeting, which they're all out, and they're leaving the Paris trip meeting. And he shows up with a bunch of flowers. He got a new haircut. And he tells Elle that he likes her, and she says he likes him too. She says she likes him too. And he's like, can we go out on a date tonight? And so they go to the cinema.
They go to see Moonrise Kingdom, which is Elle's favorite movie, and Tao hates it.
Yeah. And so Elle's kind of like upset that he didn't pick a date which would be something that they would enjoy together, that he like only thought of her. Was like very frustrating to her.
He's also awkward, and the like we said, they're normally very touchy, so the fact that he's now awkward about touching also rubs her the wrong way. So then that compounded with him being like, I just think that it's objectively his worst film. It's Elle gets upset. They go to the party. Things are clearly icy. Felix and Naomi are there in their own tent because Elle invited them, and we see Tao get triggered and get defensive, and they have a fight because he wasn't being himself and he wasn't putting the friendship first.
For Tara and Darcy, on the way to the Paris trip meeting, Tara ends up just like casually telling Darcy that she loves her. She says that I love you because of how annoying you are. But she immediately like takes it back and is like, I don't mean it in a like I love you way, but in like a casual I love you way. But Darcy doesn't say anything back, and this kind of sits with Tara. Like, she is definitely upset about it and like doesn't know what to think about Darcy. Just kind of, she literally runs off and joins the other group talking about prom. She's like, what about a vampire theme for prom?
Isaac. James, as we mentioned, the other openly gay kid in school, and Isaac are decorating the LGBTQ book display together in the library. James invites, later at the Paris meeting, James invites Isaac to the end of the year party, as well as the rest of their friends. And so when they show up, it's really cute. James immediately runs over to Isaac and is like, do you want a drink? Non-alcoholic, but also they have alcoholic if you want, whatever. And then they run off, and Isaac is like, are we running? And he's like, yes, we're running. And we see them later on as the party develops, that hours later they're still talking, but around them everyone is making out, and Isaac like notices that while they talk.
Other things that we see is when Tao is trying to come up with ideas and he's run for the first date and he's running them by Isaac and Charlie. He's like, oh my God, how about like an IKEA first date, like in 500 Days of Summer? And Isaac and Charlie have like the biggest eye roll ever. They're like, that is so ridiculous. Tao, stop. Honestly, I'd fucking love an IKEA date. That sounds like a great date.
I love an IKEA date. 500 Days of Summer is not the romantic comedy people think it is. It's actually really gross. But I loved that scene because, or that moment, because they don't say like, oh my gosh, you're ridiculous. They literally just look at him and he knows. I think Charlie's like, Tao.
Also, this bonfire, like we kind of touched on it, but there's like chairs and desks and all of their GCSE notes. Like, this bonfire is like taller than a human. Like, it's huge and intense, and I'm like, this just seems like a way to start a wildfire. Like, I know it's wet in England and that would be hard to spread, but like, this does not seem safe.
Yeah. And as they mentioned, definitely not legal.
No.
The movie concessions are so funny. The whole date, like we said, like the show is beautifully shot, but I really feel like the date itself is shot and edited in a Wes Anderson way, as they're seeing a Wes Anderson film. It's very like framed and colored specifically, and then they're sitting there on a love seat with these massive popcorns that are literally from their lap to their mouths. They're so big each. Plus they have a giant drink in one hand, plus they have candy, plus they have nachos on the table, so they can't even use their hands to eat the popcorn, so Tao has to like put his mouth. But like, this isn't the only size popcorn they have in the theater, because we see people behind them with very reasonably sized buckets of popcorn. It's ridiculous.
I do have to say that's my dream size of popcorn, though.
No. Between
no
the
such thing
concessions,
as too much popcorn.
Between the concessions and the tickets, that was easily over $100.
Oh yeah, 100%. My only other thing is like, why did Nick think it would be a good idea to come out on a giant party with like all of his classmates, and the fact that Charlie was like, yes, like what?
Obviously, like I said, we get more of Charlie's self-sabotage and not ever putting himself first or second or third. And his procrastination is so me-coded. Jess said especially in high school, but honestly, it was even worse in college. I once had 3 days to write a final exam paper, and I wrote it 18 hours before the deadline and pulled an all-nighter. Tao's haircut is because of Elle and like his face shape, but Alice has been very clear. Tao's haircut is because the fans hated it. And I think part of this, like, they hated his original hair that's in the comics. And I think part of this is the curse of casting someone who's so handsome as Tao, because he's like a model and we already know that he looks really good. And then you see his long hair and you're like, he looks fucking stupid. He does look really good with the haircut, but I just think it's funny that was because of fan pressure.
Yeah. I didn't think it was the greatest hair ever, but I thought it looked like the webcomic. So I was like, yeah, this makes sense. It looks like his hair in the webcomic. They don't cut it in the webcomic, but it looks good.
The Paris trip is a really funny moment where Mr. Farouk says that boys and girls can't share rooms, and everyone groans, and then all of the gays look at each other and are like, oh, too bad. And both of the teachers are gay, and they're both like, I know, you're heartbroken.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to touch on, because I've never really heard of this before and I didn't read it. I don't know if it's canon that Nick has panic attacks, but between the math GCSE and the bonfire moment so what happens in that one specifically is when he's looking to find Charlie, Tori, and he runs into Tori and she says, you're not very good at keeping your promises, are you? He then fully spirals and we get his like biphobic inner like nightmare scenarios where he's seeing like Tori say, you know, if you're bi, does that mean you're gonna cheat on my brother? And a couple other like of Charlie and some other people just like saying really awful stuff to him, and he can't breathe well, and that's like, it's a panic attack, whether or not it's not said that it's a panic attack, but it is. And I just thought that was interesting because I've never heard of him being a character with anxiety rep.
I feel like it's this thing that Alice does where like you see it in season 1 more so with Charlie, where she flashes almost to like the angel and devil on your shoulder sort of aspect, where it's like, oh my god, everything is butterfly and roses, and the screen goes pink and you see these fantastic moments, and then the screen goes dark and dim and blurry, and you see like the inner thoughts that are negative. And so I think that's her way of showing that in the film for Nick, but I don't remember reading it ever actually being panic attacks. But I do like when you watch season 2, it is a portrayal of panic attacks.
That's what I like about it, is that we see it in Charlie in season 1, and we know Charlie is traumatized from being outed and bullied, and his self-worth is very, very low. We know all of that canonically about Charlie Spring. But when we see Nick start to go through it in this season, we see that the pressure is building on him as well, and that you don't have to have gone through a serious trauma to have these big feelings. And it puts them on a little bit more of, for lack of a better term, an even playing field. So I really appreciated the complexity building into him, because he's known as the golden retriever and the perfect boyfriend, and he is those things, but he is also a fully fleshed character.
Some fun like
Oh my
quotes and
God.
scenes we get. So at
My
the
favorite.
beginning, it's so good. At the beginning, when we mentioned when the rugby lads are kind of coming up to Nick and are apologizing about like not standing up during the cinema with Harry, one of the friends goes, I know you and Charlie are really good mates. And the other friends like give them a death stare, like, why the fuck would you say that, bro? Like, why would you bring this up? But then there's a cut scene where in big bubble letters we get good mates, and it's all little scenes of Nick and Charlie making out, and it's just so good.
It's so good. This montage of them making out to massive good mates.
Yeah, it's really good. We also coach Sing. We love her. She says, well, you don't owe them that information, okay? When Nick shares, you know, that he is planning on coming out to some of the guys, and that he thinks things with the team will return back to somewhat normal once he does this. And she's kind of like, you don't need to if you don't want to. Like, you don't owe anyone that.
And that's something we get recurring, which is lovely. When they get to the party, it's the friend group plus Tori, and they're separating, and she looks at Nick and says, look after him or you die. Which is just, I love her. And then a line I really liked, it's not humorous, but it's really well delivered, is after Tao and Elle's fight, Tao and Charlie have a heart-to-heart. And Tao says, I mess everything up. And he says, I'm fundamentally unlikable. And then Charlie, of course, consoles him and stuff, and Tao goes home. But I just think, like, that's such a very sad but very real thing to feel at sometimes. Especially when you have insecurities, which we know Tao does.
Yeah. His character just feels, because we see this like little bit of like self-awareness, more insight into his life and past experiences, when he says things like this, it just allows you to understand him more.
Yeah.
Where I don't think we got any of really understanding where he was coming from in season 1. So it's very beautiful to see it in season 2.
Yeah. So that's it for this episode?
Yeah, we're going to wrap up here. We'll come back in the next one covering the rest of Heartstopper. So season episodes 4 through 8. Make sure to follow us on social media, 90s Babies Nostalgia on Instagram and YouTube. Spell out the word 90s. I really love interacting with y'all on Instagram, and all we've been getting lately is
send us your reels and we'll post it.
Yeah, we've been getting some spam comments, which I've not been deleting because, I mean, engagement. Like, let's get it out there, and comments help. But we love when you guys DM us or comment. So please, please, please chime in on Instagram. And we'll see you in the next one for the rest of Heartstopper.
Yeah. Stay gay. Bye.
Bye.